My name is Victoria, and at 33 years of age, I find myself navigating a successful career in finance. Yet I still grapple with the feeling of never being good enough for my father. The time for the annual family reunion dinner was drawing near, and I found myself dreading it more than ever this year. I purchased a luxury car for him as a gesture of reconciliation, yearning for a change in our circumstances. Unbeknownst to me, nestled within my purse lay a document poised to alter the course of my life entirely. As the night drew to a close, clarity would wash over me, revealing the reasons behind my father's indifference. Before I delve into my narrative, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from, and if you've ever found the courage to assert your value against those who wouldn't acknowledge it, don't forget to show your support by liking and subscribing. Believe me, my tale may just provide you with the strength you seek as well. In the seemingly idyllic setting of a prosperous Boston suburb, our family presented a flawless facade to the world. Yet, within the confines of our home, the reality was starkly contrasting. My father, Richard Matthews, transformed his modest real estate development company into a thriving multi-million-dollar enterprise. He placed a premium on success, status, and respect, often at the expense of his family relationships. From my earliest recollections, he was never the type of father who graced school performances or lent a hand with assignments. Instead, he was the relentless critic who highlighted that my B+ grades ought to have been A's, who interrogated why I had not been selected as team captain, who reiterated that second place was merely the first loser. My mother, Caroline, contrasted sharply with him. She radiated warmth and affection in his absence, yet transformed into a shadow of herself when he was near. In his presence, she seemed to withdraw, never daring to contradict him, never defending us children when his harsh words crossed the line. It was a complex interplay that eluded my comprehension until years later. This peculiar influence he exerted over her, the manner in which her gaze would flicker to him prior to responding to even the most mundane inquiries about dinner, arrangements, or weekend pursuits. My siblings and I were raised in the midst of this intricate family dynamic. James, my older brother, was 3 years my senior, and without a doubt, the golden child. He excelled in football, achieved a place on the honor roll, courted the appropriate girls from esteemed families, and ultimately stepped into the real estate realm, following in our father's footsteps after graduating from his alma mater. To me, it seemed as though everything flowed effortlessly for James. He appeared to possess an innate sense of what would delight our father, whereas I perpetually miscalculated. Sophia, my younger sister by 2 years, effortlessly maneuvered through the treacherous terrain of our father's approval system, a feat I never quite mastered. She may not have been the overachiever that James was, yet she possessed a captivating charm and an uncanny knack for sensing the atmosphere, knowing precisely when to engage and when to retreat into the shadows. She emerged as the family's peacemaker, the one capable of coaxing a laugh from father when shadows loomed over his mood, the one who would quietly enter my room after especially harsh criticism sessions appeared. Yet, for me, there was always a sense of insufficiency. I finished at the pinnacle of my high school class, earned a full academic scholarship to Cornell, even as my father advocated for me to follow in his footsteps, perceiving my decision as a dismissal of his legacy. Throughout my college years, I juggled 2 part-time jobs. Despite my efforts to uphold my GPA, he would often inquire during breaks why I wasn't pursuing internships at more esteemed companies. Upon graduation, I turned down his lukewarm proposal to join his company, fully aware that I would forever be regarded as nothing more than a token hire. Instead, I ventured to New York City, armed only with 2 suitcases and an unwavering resolve, resting on a friend's couch as I submitted applications to every financial firm within my reach. Upon securing an entry-level position at Goldman Sachs, his reaction was, "Let's see if you can endure for a month." For 8 long years, I toiled relentlessly, not merely a month, climbing the ranks without the crutch of family ties or favoritism. My journey was driven not only by an unwavering passion, but also by an urgent desire to defy his expectations. Just last month, I received a significant promotion to senior investment strategist, making me the youngest individual in the firm's history to attain this role. The increase in my salary was significant, enabling me to purchase my dream apartment in Manhattan while still retaining some savings. With those savings in hand, I envisioned a grand gesture, deciding to purchase a brand new Mercedes S-Class for my father to celebrate Father's Day. In my imagination, this offering would ultimately reveal to him my success, my worthiness of his approval. The vehicle demanded almost an entire year's earnings, yet I persuaded myself that the reward of hearing him express his pride in me would justify the expense. Reflecting on the past, I recognized the pitiful nature of that craving for validation, and how it influenced every significant choice I made. My accomplishments were not genuinely for my own sake. Rather, they served as tools in a futile battle for his love. In purchasing that car, I sought more than just a luxury vehicle. I was in pursuit of something every child inherently deserves: the boundless, unwavering love of a parent. The yearly gathering of the Matthews family took place on the final weekend of June, perfectly timed to coincide with Father's Day, transforming the event into a dual celebration of Richard Matthews' role as the family patriarch. This year promised to be unlike any other, as I had resolved to make a statement by acquiring that extravagantly priced luxury vehicle, a polished black Mercedes S-Class, complete with all the lavish amenities my father had once admired at a friend's residence in the country club. As the day drew near, my unease surged to unprecedented levels. For 3 weekends I embarked on a quest to find the ideal outfit, one that exuded success without appearing overly ambitious, that embraced femininity yet avoided frivolity, embodying the paradox my father seemed to envision for women in the paradox my father seemed to envision for women. Business world. I chose a navy blue tailored dress from a designer my mother spoke of with admiration, complemented by understated gold jewelry and elegant shoes that exuded quality without being ostentatious. The well-worn ritual of preparation struck me as pitiable, even as I engaged in it, the frantic cycle of a grown child still yearning for validation at the age of 32. As I packed, memories of past reunions flickered in my mind, each tinged with a sense of paternal disappointment. At the age of 16, after clinching victory in the state math competition, he posed a question that lingered in my mind. Why wasn't I dedicating more of my energy to debate, given that individuals with a knack for numbers were a dime a dozen? Upon my graduation, where I achieved summa cum laude honors, his sole remark was that my selected profession lacked the stability of real estate. My initial bonus at Goldman prompted him to ponder if finance was merely an elevated form of gambling, while my first promotion sparked inquiries about whether I had been chosen to satisfy a gender quota. No accomplishment stood alone in its glory, forever shadowed by his doubt. Yet this year brought forth an added complexity, one that had shaken the very core of my identity merely 3 months prior. A well-known genetic testing service, which I had engaged with purely out of a desire to explore my ancestry, unveiled an unforeseen revelation. The genetic markers failed to correspond with the notion of her being Richard Matthews' biological daughter. Following the initial wave of shock and disbelief, I embarked on a quiet quest for clarity, discreetly collecting DNA samples from my father's hairbrush during a fleeting visit home. The findings were definitive, resting now in a sealed envelope within my purse, a last resort I had yet to determine whether to unleash. The revelation illuminated countless aspects of my existence: the enduring sense of alienation within my own family, the unspoken physical distinctions that went unnoticed, and the unfathomable chill emanating from a man who extended even the slightest warmth to his other offspring. I had a feeling he was aware, had always been aware, and that awareness had tinted every exchange we'd ever shared. On the eve of the reunion, I navigated my way to my parents' suburban Boston residence in the sleek new Mercedes, having coordinated its delivery to a nearby dealership. I had meticulously arranged the presentation, timing my arrival for mid-afternoon, when my mother would be occupied at her garden club meeting, thus creating a private opportunity for this gesture of reconciliation. My father opened the door, clad in his typical crisp, business-casual attire. Even though it was Saturday, his expression tinged with mild annoyance at the unexpected interruption. "Eliza, you've arrived ahead of schedule." "The reunion isn't till tomorrow," he remarked, glancing at his watch as though I had overlooked an important engagement. "I know, Dad," I replied. "I brought your Father's Day gift a bit early and wanted to share it with you in private," I said, my heart racing as I presented him with a small box that held the car key, the Mercedes emblem unmistakably gleaming on its surface. With a courteous yet distant demeanor typical of obligatory gifts, he unwrapped it, his expression transforming into one of surprise as the logo came into view. "Is this some kind of joke?" he inquired, and I led him to the front window, where the pristine car shimmered in the driveway. His face reflected true astonishment, quickly giving way to a fleeting hint of pleasure, only to dissolve back into his familiar, analytical demeanor. "This is too much, Eliza. What is it that you seek to demonstrate?" he inquired, even as he made his way to the front door, key poised in his grasp. "Nothing. I deceived. I received a significant promotion, and I wanted to do something memorable for you." He walked around the car, scrutinizing it as if it were a real estate opportunity, taking note of its features, and posing incisive questions about financing and insurance that felt more like an interrogation than an expression of gratitude. Following a short test drive, during which he noted the steering felt somewhat loose despite the vehicle's celebrated handling, he chose to park it in the garage instead of leaving it in the driveway for guests to observe. His gratitude was cursory, swiftly followed by a remark that I must be doing well to squander money like this, effectively undermining the significance of my grand gesture. That evening, I reached out to my best friend Taylor from my hotel room, struggling to hold back tears as I shared the chilling reception I had received. "You know what? Forget him," Taylor declared, her voice laced with the fierce indignation of a friend who had witnessed too many similar tales unfold. "Return the vehicle. He doesn't deserve it." I brushed aside the suggestion, still holding on to the hope that tomorrow would bring a change, that perhaps in the presence of others he might express gratitude, might finally notice me. "Just promise me you won't show him that test," Taylor cautioned before ending the call. "Not unless you're ready for nuclear fallout," I vowed. Yet the envelope lingered in my purse, a clandestine weapon I both dreaded and found impossible to let go. Sunday afternoon unfolded with the kind of June weather that seemed almost scripted, sunshine spilling across the landscape, accompanied by a gentle breeze, as if nature itself conspired to craft the illusion of a flawless family reunion. I opted for the longer route to my parents' estate, using the drive as a stage to rehearse my confident replies to the predictable inquiries about my personal life, my career path, and the glaring absence of a husband or children at the ripe age of a husband or children at the ripe age. 32. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles turning white as I turned onto the familiar maple-lined driveway, already crowded with the luxury vehicles of extended family and my father's business associates, who somehow always found their way onto the guest list for these supposedly intimate gatherings. I noticed the Mercedes I had gifted him, prominently showcased near the front entrance instead of its usual garage spot, deliberately placed for all arriving guests to see. Taking a deep breath, I adjusted my dress, checked my makeup one last time, and walked toward the grand front door with the assuredness I had honed in boardrooms filled with men who often underestimated me. Mother greeted me, her face brightening with genuine warmth as she embraced me, whispering, "You look beautiful, darling," before adding her customary, "Your father's in the back garden with the Peterson group," as if it were a cautionary note. The grand foyer buzzed with the presence of relatives, a familiar blend of true family, and my father's meticulously selected acquaintances, all of whom enjoyed honorary status within the Matthews clan. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, glided over, greeting me with air kisses and a flurry of inquiries about my romantic endeavors. Meanwhile, Uncle George extended a robust handshake, his voice resonating with a jovial, "There's our Wall Street wizard," a remark I was certain would ruffle my father's feathers if he happened to overhear. Cousins, second cousins, and family friends danced through familiar routines. The same dialogues echoed year after year, punctuated by slight variations, each person fulfilling their designated part in the Matthews family play. My father's arrival unfolded just as I anticipated, stepping in from the garden alongside 3 business associates, all chuckling over something that was likely only mildly amusing but deemed uproarious, thanks to the speaker's financial success. His gaze roamed the room, acknowledging the various guests with nods and fleeting greetings until it settled on me. A flicker of recognition passed through him, accompanied by the slightest tightening of his lips, before he offered a nod akin to those given to distant relatives and made his way to my mother to whisper something in her ear. No special greeting for me, his middle child, the daughter who had just presented him with an automobile worth more than most people's annual salaries. I feigned indifference, engrossed in a discussion with my cousin Rachel regarding her medical residency, yet the familiar sting of dismissal pierced through me nonetheless. Months later, My mother appeared at my side, her touch light upon my arm. "Darling," she said, "your father mentioned you brought a new car for him." "How incredibly generous," she remarked, her eyes revealing a blend of gratitude and unease regarding the lavishness. "Please come say hello to the Stevensons. They just returned from a financial conference in Singapore and would appreciate your insights." This was her mother's way, constantly orchestrating social dynamics, crafting buffers, and inventing justifications for interactions that ought to flow effortlessly among family. James made his entrance, as was his style, accompanied by his flawless wife Rebecca and their two immaculate children, basking in the affectionate embrace from my father that I had long sought. "Dad, the new car is incredible. When did you choose to upgrade?" he inquired, and I stood in astonishment as my father patted him on the shoulder and replied, "At times, it's essential to indulge oneself, my dear. Success brings with it certain advantages, yet there's no acknowledgement of the offering or my role in it." Just as I was about to grapple with this overt dismissal, Sophia stepped in, enveloping me in a heartfelt embrace that lasted just long enough to convey her empathy. "That's amazing, Liz. Seriously groundbreaking," she whispered, invoking my childhood nickname that had long faded from use. Her sincerity felt like a soothing balm, yet the stark contrast with our father's indifference only served to amplify the disparity between us. As the appetizers made their rounds, borne by the hired staff, I caught sight of my father guiding a cluster of his business associates toward the front drive, his gestures full of life. Through the expansive bay windows, I watched him showcase the Mercedes, flinging open the doors, highlighting its features, his expression radiating a pride I had never witnessed aimed at me. "He's been at it all morning," Sophia whispered, materializing at my side with a glass of wine that I accepted with gratitude. 3 distinct excursions for various circles of his companions. Mother mentioned that you purchased it for him. That was remarkably generous, Liz. I took a sip of the wine, observing my father as he eased into the driver's seat, beckoning one of his associates to indulge in the comforts of the passenger side. I couldn't deny that my intentions were less about generosity. Deep down, I yearned for him to recognize me as someone successful, someone deserving of his attention. Pathetic, isn't it? Sophia tightened her grip on my arm. Not pathetic, just human. But Liz, you must grasp this. She paused, selecting her words with precision. Dad will never provide you with what you seek. It's not that you lack worth. Rather, he is simply unable to meet your needs. There's a fracture within him that manifests uniquely in relation to you. Her words struck with an unexpected intensity. It wasn't the novelty of the information that struck me, but rather the jarring realization that someone else had recognized the intricate dynamics I had navigated throughout my life. Suddenly, the weight of the paternity test nestled in my purse felt magnified, the sealed envelope transforming into a ticking bomb, an explosive truth I yearned to unleash yet simultaneously wished to keep at bay. The hour leading up to dinner unfolded with the familiar cadence of Matthew's family gatherings, each member gravitating toward the formal living room, where the uncomfortable antique furniture and the meticulously curated decor, chosen by mother but sanctioned by father, created a space that felt both stifling and oddly predictable. I settled into a window seat, slightly distanced from the main circle of conversation, cradling a second glass of wine while I observed the familiar family dynamics unfold. With a sense of newfound clarity, the awareness of my genetic otherness lent me an almost anthropological detachment. James effortlessly commanded the spotlight, captivating the gathered family with stories of his latest real estate venture, a struggling shopping complex he envisioned transforming into luxury condominiums. While my partners viewed the initial investment as risky, he articulated the potential that seemed to elude everyone else, our father nodding in approval from his leather armchair throne. That's the Matthews instinct, my father interjected proudly, recognizing opportunity where others perceive failure. It's in the blood. The irony of his statement didn't escape me, the phantom weight of the envelope in my purse growing heavier with each familial assertion. The conversation turned seamlessly toward me as James wrapped up his self-congratulatory monologue. "Eliza, Richard tells me you've advanced at your firm," my Uncle Robert interjected, a note of genuine interest coloring his voice. "Senior investment strategist, isn't it? Quite impressive for someone your age." Before I could utter a word, my father cleared his throat. "It's a solid stepping stone," he said, "though the financial sector is volatile. as it always has been. Unlike something tangible like property, he added, turning his gaze toward James. Real assets endure market fluctuations. They persist through generations. The familiar dismissal stung, even though I had anticipated it. The calculated shift back to James and real estate, underscoring the perceived inferiority of my chosen career path. Actually, I began, summoning the professional tone I employed in challenging client meetings. My division generated 38% returns last quarter, outperforming the market by 22 points amidst significant volatility. Our risk assessment model, which I developed, has been embraced company-wide. A brief pause filled the air, marked by a palpable sense of awe, before the father broke the silence with a casual wave of his hand. Figures on a page, when the next downturn arrives, we shall see how resilient they truly are. He then shifted his attention to his business partner. Henry, regarding property values, what are your thoughts on the zoning changes in the Cambridge corridor? I took a moment to refresh my drink and crossed paths with Sophia in the hallway, as she returned from checking on her husband, who was keeping an eye on the children in the backyard. Don't let him get to you, she whispered, giving my arm a reassuring squeeze. I heard about your model from Michael's cousin who is in finance. It seemed nothing short of revolutionary. Her validation enveloped me in warmth, even as I recognized the pitiful nature of my lingering desire for such approval. As I made my way to the bar setup in the dining room, I caught snippets of my father's voice wafting from his adjacent study. The door left slightly ajar. The car, indeed, a significant enhancement from the previous model. When one toils diligently and creates something from the ground up, as I have, such luxuries are well-deserved. The voice that answered was unmistakably Walter Peterson, a figure who had long been both a rival and an occasional ally of Richard's father. "Richard, you old dog," he said, a hint of camaraderie in his tone. "Always the modest one, I see. Your daughter Eliza mentioned she picked it out for you during our earlier conversation. She mentioned something about her promotion. It seems she's carving out a notable reputation for herself in New York." A moment of silence ensued before father's reply, each word carefully selected. "Indeed, the girl has perpetually sought the spotlight. The reality is, her achievements stem from the chances I afforded her. Prestigious schools, collegiate networks, and the essential grasp of business principles I imparted to all my children. The car symbolizes her embrace of the lessons I've imparted. The casual dismissal of my achievements, the rewriting of my hard-won independence as if it were a product of his influence, despite his relentless criticism, ignited a surge of anger within me so fierce that I almost lost my grip on my glass. The dialogue pressed on, with my father detailing how he had always driven Eliza harder than the rest, claiming she required that additional discipline, all while casting himself as the creator of successes he had previously belittled. I withdrew before being found, a tempest of anger transforming into a chilling, illuminating fury. In the central corridor, James caught my attention, his demeanor unusually grave. "Eliza, a moment," he urged, leading me to a secluded nook beside Mother's cherished orchid collection. "Dad brought up that you've been posing unusual questions to Mom about her college days. What are you really trying to uncover?" His straightforwardness took me by surprise. Honestly, after the DNA test, I had nonchalantly probed into Mom's life before marriage, seeking hints about potential relationships, but I had assumed my inquiries were discreet enough. As I endeavored to understand her more deeply, my response was measured. Women of her era often faced limited chances to forge their own identities prior to the commitments of marriage and motherhood. James observed me with our father's discerning eyes, the familial likeness unmistakable, serving as a poignant reminder of my own sense of alienation. "Listen, whatever it is you're attempting, whatever message you're trying to convey through lavish presents and intrusive inquiries, just cease. The family possesses a distinct structure, a balance. Do not disturb that with the turmoil you seem to be creating." His condescension resonated so clearly from his father that I nearly chuckled. Harmony? Is that the term for this toxic hierarchy? A system where one individual's achievements are lauded, while another's are belittled. I'm not fabricating anything, James. At last, clarity has dawned upon me. He moved in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper to evade notice. "My father has constructed the very foundation of all we possess. The legacy of the Matthews name carries weight because of him. Your prestigious position in New York, your stylish apartment, everything you have is built upon the foundation he established. It's time to acknowledge that with the respect and gratitude it deserves." Before I could utter a word, our cousin Rachel drew near, as if attuned to the palpable tension in the air. "Everything all right over here?" she inquired. "Aunt Caroline is on the lookout for both of you. I believe dinner is about to be served." James donned his public smile, the ideal son facade effortlessly reassembling itself. "Just having a chat with my little sister. Matters of business." As he turned to leave, Rachel's fingers brushed against my arm softly. "You know, my mother often remarks that your father treats favorites as if it were an Olympic event he's intent on winning a medal for. For what it's worth, I find your achievements on your own to be truly remarkable." Her subtle support nearly shattered my meticulously held composure. After years of persuading myself that the issue lay in my perception rather than in reality, having another person recognize the dynamic was both a validation and a source of deep devastation. The dinner bell rang, a familiar cue from Mother that summoned us all to the formal dining room. I hesitated, my fingers grazing the edge of the envelope tucked away in my purse, contemplating the choices, the repercussions, the unfolding possibilities. A part of me yearned to escape at once, to retreat from this facade of familial togetherness, to shield myself from the predictable hurts that the night was bound to bring. Yet, a more resilient, perhaps even self-punishing part of me refused to back down, resolute in my decision to face this moment, to finally confront the years of rejection with the tangible evidence of its origin. I glanced at the envelope one last time, ensuring the test results remained securely sealed within, then squared my shoulders and advanced toward the dining room, bracing myself for the performance that lay ahead. The Matthews formal dining room had always seemed to me a fitting symbol of our family, with its grand mahogany table that could accommodate 20 yet somehow exuded a chilling detachment. The ancestral portraits gazing down with a critical eye from the walls, and the ornate place settings that favored appearance over comfort, mirroring the very essence of my father's meticulously crafted world. Mother had truly excelled in her table arrangements, with crystal glasses refracting the light from the chandelier, fresh flower centerpieces meticulously placed, and name cards adorned in exquisite calligraphy, designating each guest's rightful place within the family hierarchy. I discovered my card, as expected, positioned far down the table, nestled between Cousin Rachel's husband, a man I had encountered perhaps twice, and one of Father's younger business associates, ensuring a safe distance from any substantial conversation. James and his family claimed the coveted spots near Father at the head of the table, while Sophia and her husband acted as buffers between the inner circle and those of lesser standing. Mother occupied the far end, her placement a striking representation of her status within the family, formally equal yet divided by the vastness of the table, linked yet apart. The first course made its entrance with impeccable timing, the waitstaff presenting delicate appetizers of seared scallops, adorned with microgreens before each guest in unison. Father stood, wineglass raised, invoking instant silence without uttering a single word. "Welcome, family and friends, to our annual reunion," he began, his voice smooth and inviting. He exuded charm, his public persona gleaming with a polished sheen. Each year I find myself reflecting on how fortunate I am to have created not only a thriving business, but also a legacy that lives through my family. His gaze swept proudly over James, who nodded appreciatively, then Sophia, who smiled demurely before gliding past me, as though I were merely part of the decor. "A special welcome to the Peterson Group joining us this year," he continued, acknowledging his business associates. "When enveloped by success, one inevitably draws in more of the same." The toast unfolded as Father extolled James's recent business expansion, celebrated Sophia's appointment to the community board, and concluded with a pointed remark about how family success stems from embracing established pathways rather than pursuing unnecessary challenges. Traditions lingered in the air, his gaze briefly meeting mine with unmistakable significance. As the meal advanced through 5 elaborate courses, Father steered the conversation with subtle cues and direct inquiries, ensuring that topics remained firmly within his favored realms of real estate markets, local politics, where he wielded influence, and the occasional sports discussion that inevitably shone a spotlight on James's past athletic triumphs. As Mother delicately tried to bring up my recent promotion in a quiet moment, Father seamlessly interjected. "Speaking of financial markets, Henry, what's your take on the Fed's latest signals?" His words effectively erased her attempt without a trace of recognition. By the time the fish course arrived, the familiar dynamic had fully unfolded, with Father intermittently tossing pointed questions my way, each crafted to undermine rather than foster genuine engagement. "Eliza, your firm focuses mainly on domestic investments, right? It seems somewhat restrictive considering the vast opportunities for global expansion. I see your promotion followed the Davidson account." It was indeed fortunate that James introduced you to William Davidson at last year's charity gala. Each remark seems meticulously crafted to portray any success as either narrow in scope or reliant on family ties that I had consciously chosen not to emphasize. I upheld the composed professional facade I had honed in adversarial boardrooms, steadfastly resisting the emotional response he appeared intent on eliciting. "In fact, Father, our international division adopted my risk assessment model last quarter, and the Davidson account emerged from a blind pitch competition, with no introductions made." My responses were conveyed with a practiced ease, though I caught Sophia's sympathetic flinch at each interaction, the familial choreography painfully predictable. The main course made its entrance, an intricately crafted beef Wellington that demanded undivided attention for several moments, offering a fleeting escape from the conversational hazards surrounding the table. Father seized the moment to uncork another bottle of fine wine, his intake steadily rising as the meal progressed, a troubling trend that Mother monitored with anxious glances. James leaned in to whisper something to Father, only to be met with a dismissive wave in reply. As coffee and dessert were served, my father's gaze returned to me, the effects of alcohol having stripped away his usual restraint. "Eliza, Richard tells me you're still single," Mrs. Peterson remarked with genuine curiosity. "Such a beautiful, accomplished young woman. The men in New York must feel a sense of intimidation." Just as I was about to craft a courteous reply regarding priorities, my father interjected. "Eliza has always been more concerned with proving a point than with creating something meaningful," he remarked, swirling his bourbon with a thoughtful air. "Some individuals pursue achievements to address deeper emptiness. Family demands compromise, a lesson the Matthews women have historically grasped more adeptly than she has." The casual cruelty struck with calculated accuracy, suggesting that my professional triumph was merely a substitute for personal shortcomings, rather than a merit in its own right. Mother's sharp intake of breath pierced the air, reaching me even from my distant table. "Richard," she began, her tone unexpectedly firm, yet he pressed on, oblivious to her words. If only Eliza had embraced the suitable matches I presented over the years, rather than brushing them aside as dull or ordinary, she might not be confronting her 30s in solitude. Every word was meticulously chosen for its profound effect. The public examination of my personal decisions masqueraded as a paternal concern, yet it was in reality a harsh critique, causing a familiar tension to rise behind my eyes. The instinct from childhood to escape the table clashed with the adult resolve to uphold my dignity. I took a measured sip of water, observing with a cool detachment that my hand held steady, even as a storm of emotions churned within. "I appreciate your concern for my personal fulfillment, Father," I replied with calm resolve, employing every negotiation tactic I have ever mastered. "Yet, as you frequently pointed out, Matthews prioritizes results, and my results are a testament to my efforts." A heavy silence enveloped the table, as relatives, seasoned by years of similar confrontations, meticulously scrutinized their dessert plates. Father's business associates fidgeted, their attention abruptly drawn to the intricate designs of the ceiling above. With each heartbeat, the pressure in my chest intensified, a culmination of countless moments like this. Public shaming masquerading as familial concern, a systematic obliteration of my identity and accomplishments. The envelope nestled in my purse throbbed with latent power, a last resort I had vowed to myself and Taylor I would not unleash. As the waitstaff cleared the dessert plates, a moment of stark realization washed over me. The current path was untenable. The relentless pursuit of approval from a man inherently inclined to withhold it had become a form of self-sabotage. I could no longer sustain. As coffee cups were replenished and brandy was offered to cap off the sumptuous meal, my father subtly pushed his chair back, a gesture universally recognized by our gathered family as the prelude to one of his spontaneous speeches, a tradition that had taken shape over the years at Matthew's gatherings. An anticipatory hush enveloped the room, conversations abruptly ceasing, silverware gently set aside, and all eyes instinctively turned toward the patriarch. Father stood, brandy snifter in hand, his expression adopting the benevolent authority he reserved for these moments of public performance. Before we dispersed to the garden for our annual family photograph, he began, his voice resonating with the particular timbre of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. I'd like to take a moment to express my pride in what the Matthews family continues to build together. He gestured expansively, including the business associates as honorary members of this supposed dynasty. A family resembles a business, an enterprise that demands vision, leadership, and members who grasp their roles in fostering collective success. His gaze traversed the table in that familiar manner of seeming to make eye contact with all while truly connecting with none. As I survey this gathering, I'm reminded of my fortune in having children who enrich our family legacy in significant ways. He turned toward James, lifting his glass just a fraction. James, your business insight never fails to astound not only me but the whole Boston development scene. The Riverside Project embodies the very essence of the daring, visionary mindset that sets Matthew's endeavors apart from the ordinary. You have not merely absorbed the lessons I imparted, but you have transformed them into something greater. James nodded with a humility that was almost rehearsed, masking the satisfaction that bubbled beneath the surface, the golden child claiming his rightful praise. Father then turned his gaze to Sophia, his demeanor softening even more. Dear Sophia, your ability to harmonize family duties with your role in community leadership reflects an admirable level of maturity. Your contributions to the Children's Hospital Board have elevated the Matthews name, serving as a poignant reminder that authentic success encompasses the act of giving back. Your mother and I are filled with pride for the family you are nurturing and the values you embody. Sophia's smile radiated authenticity, though tinged with a hint of unease under the glare of attention. She thrived in the role of a supporter, finding solace in elevating others, rather than basking in her own accolades. I steeled myself for the familiar ritual that was sure to unfold, the deliberate gaps, the conspicuous quiet where my name ought to have been, the artful maneuver of commendation through omission that spoke louder than any overt disparagement. Yet, what transpired was, in its own way, even more disheartening. Father's gaze finally settled on me, the subtle narrowing of his eyes revealing the careful strategy that lay ahead. As I ponder my children's achievements, he continued, his voice shifting in a way that could easily be misinterpreted as contemplation rather than the impending confrontation it truly heralded. I'm struck by the myriad ways success can be perceived. He took a measured sip of brandy, the deliberate pause heightening the atmosphere of anticipation. With a triumphant lift of his glass, he declared his pride in all his children, and for a fleeting moment, a foolish glimmer of hope flickered within me, only to be swiftly snuffed out. His next words, aimed at the loser seated at the table, struck with a chilling precision, creating a heavy silence that hung in the air before uncertain laughter began to ripple through the guests. Most assumed it was merely an inside family jest, oblivious to the public dissection it truly represented. A rush of heat flooded my cheeks, only to be replaced by a chilling numbness as every gaze at the table shifted toward me, revealing a spectrum of reactions from embarrassment to pity to morbid curiosity. Father carried on as though he had merely made a light-hearted comment about the weather. Some individuals gauge success through titles and salaries, through superficial accolades that may dazzle on paper yet lack depth and endurance. Genuine success is rooted in the preservation of family traditions, in the act of building upon established foundations, rather than perpetually striving to validate personal worth at the cost of communal strength. The intentional ambiguity of certain individuals deceived no one, the object of his comments unmistakably clear. Mother's complexion had drained of color, her knuckles pale and tight around her napkin, while James wore a self-satisfied smirk and Sophia appeared thoroughly embarrassed. Cousin Rachel extended her hand across her husband to grasp my arm in a wordless show of solidarity, yet I scarcely acknowledged the gesture. My entire consciousness narrowed to a pinpoint focus on the man at the head of the table, who had just confirmed what the DNA test had already revealed. I was fundamentally separate, other, not truly part of this family in his eyes. For 20 seconds that stretched like hours, I remained frozen, experiencing the physical sensations of humiliation with clinical detachment. The burning face, the constricted throat, the accelerated heartbeat, the fight or flight response flooding my nervous system with adrenaline. A lifetime of similar moments flashed through my mind, a continual slideshow of public corrections, subtle undermining achievements reframed as failures, each building upon the last to create the summative message that I was fundamentally insufficient, unworthy of the name I carried. The name that genetic science had recently confirmed wasn't actually mine to claim. As my father wrapped up his speech with a hollow platitude about family unity, his pointed exclusion resonated deeply within me, severing the final thread that bound the desperate child, seeking approval to the adult woman who now saw with startling clarity the futility of that lifelong pursuit. The weight of the envelope in my purse shifted from a burden to a symbol of liberation, its contents transforming from a shameful secret into a key that unlocked the prison of false expectations I had inhabited for so long. The room hung in a tense silence, bracing for my reaction, perhaps anticipating tears or a hasty exit as had been the pattern in previous years, the predictable climax of our familiar family drama. Instead, a peculiar calm enveloped me, a clarity of purpose taking shape around the decision that had perhaps been destined from the moment the test results arrived. Without a detailed plan, I found myself rising, the motion so fluid and intentional that it drew immediate focus, conversations pausing mid-sentence as all eyes shifted toward me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension, particularly from those familiar with past confrontations involving Matthew's family. My champagne glass stayed on the table, deliberately unraised, the symbolism of my refusal to toast unmistakable. I smoothed my dress with steady hands, astonished by the profound calm that had supplanted the earlier chaos, as if I had navigated through a tempest into its serene center. "Thank you, Father, for that enlightening speech," I began, my voice resonating effortlessly. The polished tone I had honed in boardrooms proving invaluable in this unforeseen moment that was never destined to be granted as I measured myself against standards that inexplicably shifted whenever I drew near to achieving them. Today, clarity dawned. The room fell into a profound stillness, the kind of heavy silence that heralds pivotal moments, with Mother's face a portrait of alarm, and Father's expression clouded by the realization that this narrative was veering off his anticipated course. For anyone who's paying attention, I moved forward with a purposeful ease that masked the weight of what lay ahead. I graduated at the top of my class from Cornell, forged a career without the benefit of family ties, and recently earned the title of the youngest senior investment strategist in my firm's history. By any reasonable standard, I am far from the definition of a loser. I let my eyes roam across the table, catching fleeting glances from a few relatives who offered slight nods of recognition before my focus returned to Father. Yet, in Richard Matthews' realm, success has never hinged on objective accomplishments, has it? It revolves around adherence to his distinct vision, a reflection of his own glory, rather than the illumination of one's individual path. I reached for my purse with a measured serenity, conscious that each gesture was under scrutiny, the rare sight of the obedient middle child daring to deviate too intriguing to overlook. "I purchased a car for you, one that surpasses the value of what most earn in a year." I spoke directly to Father, whose expression had transformed into the familiar cold mask he donned when business dealings were not unfolding in his favor. It wasn't because you required it or even truly merited it, but rather because I clung to a lingering youthful hope that a gesture of such magnitude might finally close the enigmatic chasm that has lingered between us throughout my life. From my purse, I retrieved. The envelope held the paternity test results, its paper now appearing almost ordinary in light of the profound information it bore. "For 30 years, I have carried the burden of guilt for your failure to offer me the same warmth you extend to James and to Sophia. I have contorted myself into myriad forms, seeking to embody whatever would finally secure your approval, all the while oblivious to the truth that the issue lay not in my deeds, but within my very essence. A collective gasp rippled around the table as the weight of my words settled in, causing Mother's face to pale, while James sat up with newfound intensity. I positioned the envelope carefully at the center of the table, each movement intentional and thoughtful. "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day," I uttered with a subdued finality, imbuing the paternal title with all the irony the occasion warranted. Without pausing for a reply, I pivoted and strode from the dining room, my posture erect, my steps measured, clinging to the remnants of dignity that had been methodically eroded throughout the night. The stunned quiet lingered until I reached the foyer, whereupon a cacophony of overlapping conversations erupted, questions merging into a chaotic murmur. I pressed onward into the night, the cool evening air brushing against my heated skin, the path to the driveway aglow with decorative lanterns casting soft pools of light in the encroaching twilight. The Mercedes stood exactly where Father had placed it, designed for optimal visibility, its gleaming black paintwork mirroring the lights of the house, a testament to all I had sought to acquire with funds that ought to have been devoted to my own aspirations. The choice felt less like a decision, and more like a foregone conclusion, my fingers instinctively locating the spare key fob nestled in my purse. The remote unlock emitted a soft chirp, oddly cheerful for the gravity of the moment. I settled into the driver's seat. The leather interior still held the intoxicating scent of a new car, intertwined with the subtle hint of Father's cologne, a sensory echo of his fleeting ownership that would soon dissipate. Through the windshield, I glimpsed figures materializing at the dining room windows, their silhouettes animatedly gesturing, the family drama fully unleashed by my departure and revelation. The engine purred to life with an air of expensive precision, the dashboard lighting up with welcoming hues as if nothing significant had transpired, as if this were merely another drive, rather than a definitive severance from 32 years of emotional servitude. As I reversed down the driveway, I caught a fleeting glimpse of the front door swinging open, Father's figure illuminated in the light, one hand gripping what seemed to be the opened envelope, his mouth forming what might have been my name. Lost. Beneath the gentle rumble of the German-engineered engine, the symmetry captivated me as I sped away. The luxury car he had flaunted to his associates while downplaying my role now physically absent, mirroring his attempts to diminish my presence over 3 decades. Both acts of erasure converged in a striking narrative balance. This realization transformed what had been an instinctive response into a deliberate choice, the reclamation of the gift, echoing my journey towards self-worth, both liberated from the unreciprocated expectations of gratitude. In the rearview mirror, the Matthews estate faded, shrinking with each passing moment, its opulence lessening with distance, just as its emotional grip on me loosened with every turn of the wheels taking me away. The lightness unfurling within my chest was not quite happiness, too intricate, and tinged with bitter sweetness for such a straightforward label. Instead, it was the strange sensation of liberation, of choices suddenly unshackled from the relentless pull of paternal approval that had warped my trajectory for as long as I could recall. The Mercedes glided with quiet precision as I steered away from the neighborhood of my youth, each turn carving out greater distance between the person I had been just 30 minutes prior and the individual I was on the cusp of becoming. I reached nearly to the highway entrance before the first call pierced the silence, Sophia's name illuminating the dashboard display, swiftly followed by James, Mother, and several cousins, the digital remnants of chaos trailing behind me. I fell silent. The ringer was muted, yet I refrained from shutting the phone off entirely. A part of me craved to observe the aftermath, even if I wasn't prepared to confront it head-on. As I merged onto the highway toward Boston, rather than returning to New York, I permitted myself a fleeting look in the rearview mirror. Just then, I saw a familiar male figure, my father, hurrying into the street behind me, his usually calm demeanor twisted into an expression I had never encountered. Something that transcended anger into a realm I couldn't quite place. The distance rendered his voice inaudible, yet I needed no sound to decipher the scream conveyed through his body language. His arms, raised high in a raw display of emotion, transformed him into someone unrecognizable, no longer the composed patriarch who had orchestrated years of emotional manipulation. That image seared itself into my memory as I sped away, a vivid symbol of the monumental shift that had just unfolded. The meticulously crafted family narrative lay shattered, irreparably damaged by 3 pages of scientific data and a singular moment of piercing clarity. By the time I arrived at a downtown Boston hotel, half an hour later, my phone buzzed with 17 missed calls and 29 text messages, the digital aftermath of the explosion I had ignited before turning my back. I set the room key down on the desk, slipped off my heels, and finally permitted myself to delve into the messages, beginning with Sophia's texts. They shifted from bewilderment. What just happened? What was in that envelope? To urgency with Liz imploring, "Please call me, everyone's freaking out." Then came the details. Dad is saying outrageous things. Mom has locked herself in her room and James is threatening legal action over the car. Mother's voice messages started off composed. A gentle plea. "Eliza, please call home when you get a chance." But as the messages progressed, her tone shifted dramatically. By the 5th message, her voice trembled with emotion, pleading, "The test can't be right. There must be some mistake. Please come back so we can discuss this as a family." Meanwhile, James confined himself to 2 terse texts, both laced with threats of legal action if I didn't return Dad's property immediately and retract my so-called disgusting accusations. The divergence in my siblings' reactions was predictable, each response a reflection of the roles they had long inhabited within our family. Perched on the edge of the hotel bed, phone clutched in my hand, I found that the physical and emotional separation from the reunion granted me an unexpected clarity. The paternity test had validated a truth that a deep, instinctual part of me had perhaps always sensed. Richard Matthews was not my biological father, and the emotional chasm he had kept throughout my life was rooted in a truth he had never dared to confront. On a whim, I had procured the test after learning from a recreational genetic testing service that my alleged paternal genetic markers were misaligned. The initial shock morphed into an unsettling sense of clarity. A lifetime of feeling like an outsider within my own family now faced the harsh light of reality. As the carefully curated family facade began to crumble, decades of deception collapsing under the burden of undeniable scientific evidence. The most telling response arrived nearly 2 hours later, after I had showered and donned clothes from the overnight bag I had packed, anticipating that the reunion might prove unbearable, a foresight that now felt eerily accurate. As my phone buzzed to life, displaying Sophia's number, an undeniable urge surged within me to grasp the sound of a familiar voice, one that could validate the reality of the earthquake I had set in motion, ensuring it wasn't merely a figment of my imagination. "Liz." Sophia's tone was soft, hinting at a secluded corner of the house, still bustling with the presence of our extended family. "Are you all right? Where are you?" The sincerity in her voice almost shattered my carefully maintained facade. "I'm safe," I responded vaguely. "What is unfolding in that place?" She let out a deep sigh. "Utter chaos. A total breakdown. Once you departed, Dad tore open the envelope at the table, surrounded by everyone. He scanned its contents for about 30 seconds before erupting into a shout for Mom. Upon her glance at the paper, her face drained of color. They vanished into his study for what felt like an eternity of 10 minutes, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. Then Dad burst out, "Frantically searching for you," only to discover the car was gone, and he completely unraveled. I've never witnessed him in such a manner, Liz. Never. The analytical breakdown of events allowed me to keep my emotions at bay, approaching the situation as if it were a case study in business rather than my own life, unraveling before my eyes. "And Mother?" I inquired, a sense of dread washing over me, yet the need for answers compelled me. "She has confined herself to their bedroom, refusing to speak to anyone, not even James." As you might expect, the guest departed rather swiftly after that revelation. Father has been engaged in phone conversations in his study for the past hour, while James discusses an injunction regarding the car, which honestly feels like the least pressing matter at this moment. She hesitated, lowering her voice even more. "Liz, is it true? The test results, are they authentic?" The inquiry held no judgment, only a sincere yearning for clarity, so emblematic of Sophia's role as a mediator. "Indeed," I confirmed it straightforwardly. I had it completed after a genetic service highlighted discrepancies. Richard Matthews is not my biological father. Speaking the words aloud to a family member rendered them suddenly, palpably real, in a way that mere private knowledge had not. "Did you know who it is?" she asked softly. "The test doesn't reveal that. It merely confirms the negative match with the sample I provided from Father's hairbrush." I articulated that the technical aspects were simpler to navigate than the emotional ramifications. However, considering the timing and Mother's response, I suspect it was someone from her past, prior to her marriage to Father. Sophia fell silent for a brief moment before posing the question that demonstrated her keen emotional insight into the matter. "How long do you think he's known?" The question pierced through to the core, revealing that the true betrayal lay not in the biological reality, but in the years of emotional torment stemming from a situation I could not influence. "Throughout his entire life with me," I responded with a certainty that astonished even me. "It elucidates all, Sophia. Each critique, every juxtaposition, every unattainable benchmark. He wasn't aiming to improve me. He was exacting a toll for my very existence." The weight of this understanding hung in the air, unspoken yet palpable, as we both recognized the myriad instances that validated it. "I need to leave," Sophia declared abruptly. "James is on his way up, and I'd prefer he remain unaware of our conversation. Please, just send me a message to let me know you're safe, no matter where you are. And Liz, no matter what unfolds from here, my love for you remains unchanged. This alters nothing between us." Her words settled heavily in my chest, an unexpected affirmation shattering the protective numbness I had clung to since stepping out of my home. And after ending the call, I approached the hotel window that framed Boston Harbor, the city lights shimmering on the dark water, a sight that felt both familiar and alien, much like the image of myself mirrored in the glass. Somewhere within that city resided the man who had molded my childhood through a deliberate lack of affection, and perhaps also the enigmatic figure whose genetic legacy I bore. The symmetry of these two fathers, one present yet emotionally distant, the other entirely unknown yet biologically linked, crafted a peculiar equilibrium, as though the universe had at last offered an explanation for the enduring sense of disarray I had borne throughout my existence. As midnight drew near, a final message came through from an unforeseen source, my mother's seldom used private number for direct contact. "I never intended for you to discover it this way. It was not an affair. There was someone prior to your father during my college years. When I found out I was expecting, your father proposed marriage regardless, to ensure you would carry his name. It is important to understand that he endeavored to love you as if you were his own. Some men struggle to distinguish their emotions from the biological ties that bind. I let you both down by concealing the reality. It was inconsequential. Shall we meet tomorrow? Just the two of us. There's so much you need to understand." The message validated my instincts while introducing new complexities I hadn't anticipated, portraying my father as both the antagonist and the casualty of his own constraints. My mother, a figure of both deception and entrapment, navigating the treacherous waters of a less forgiving era. I set the phone down on the nightstand, silence enveloping me as emotional exhaustion washed over, finally eclipsing the adrenaline that had fueled me throughout the evening. Tomorrow loomed with the weight of decisions. How much truth I sought, how much connection I could salvage, and the new contours my life would take now that the relentless pursuit of paternal approval had been irrevocably stripped away. Tonight, I granted myself the indulgence of emotional detachment, embracing a sleep devoid of dreams, unburdened by the lifetime of inquiries that had led to this day of revelations. The week that followed what my mind had labeled as the epiphany unfolded with a peculiar duality, moving both agonizingly slow and yet dizzyingly fast, each day presenting new insights that both illuminated and complicated my understanding of my place in the world. The morning after my dramatic departure, I met my mother at a quaint cafe, far removed from familiar territory, her appearance striking me with its raw vulnerability, the meticulously crafted facade of the Matthews matriarch entirely absent, replaced by a woman who appeared both older and more authentically human than I had ever witnessed. His name was Thomas Keller. She launched into her story as soon as our coffee was set before us, her fingers quivering ever so slightly around the delicate porcelain cup. We crossed paths during our junior year at Wellesley. He was immersed in the world of engineering. A brilliant mind, kind-hearted, yet entirely unsuitable in the eyes of my parents, given my background. The moment they uncovered our relationship, they swiftly imposed their prohibition. 2 months later, I encountered your father at a charity function, the kind of match that garnered universal approval. A young woman, compelled to forsake authentic connection for the sake of social elevation, only realized her pregnancy after the relationship had been abruptly severed. Richard Matthews proposed marriage, driven by a blend of sincere affection and a shrewd evaluation of how Caroline's family ties could advance his business aspirations. He vowed to raise you as his own, Mother recounted, her gaze drifting to a distant place where memories lingered. And I believe he genuinely meant to honor that promise. From the very moment of your arrival into this world, you bore the unmistakable mark of Thomas. His eyes, his expressions, his relentless curiosity that compelled you to question rather than passively accept the narratives laid before you. Richard, in his own manner, endeavored to connect, yet each glance he cast upon you served as a stark reminder of another man's legacy, a tangible testament to a life I had lived prior to his. For 3 long hours, the revelations poured forth, each detail unraveling a history I had never fathomed, illuminating the intricate family dynamics that had ultimately sculpted my very being. My biological father was unaware of my existence, having relocated to California where he established an engineering firm after graduation, married, and fathered 3 children who were, in essence, my half-siblings. My mother had followed his life from a distance, keeping tabs through alumni newsletters and, more recently, social media, yet she never reached out to him, honoring the vow made to Richard that the past would stay hidden, that I would carry the shore, and more, Matthew's name and title if not in lineage. By the time we reached our 3rd coffee, we had ventured into the most challenging question. Why did you never shield me? I inquired, the weight of years of pain condensing into this one question. You witnessed how he treated me in contrast to James and Sophia. You observed him methodically erode every accomplishment, every effort to gain his approval. How could you allow that to persist for 30 years? Her face twisted in a sorrow so profound it briefly eclipsed my fury. I failed you, she admitted, offering no justifications. Each time I contemplated unveiling the truth, explaining why he was unable to provide you with what you truly deserved, the timing felt off, the possible repercussions too significant. As time slipped away, the falsehood expanded, becoming increasingly difficult to amend. I convinced myself of your strength and resilience, believing you were crafting a life free from his validation. It wasn't until yesterday that I recognized how deeply that quest still motivated you. The conversation concluded without a tidy resolution, merely the inception of a more authentic relationship that would demand years to reconstruct on a foundation of truth. The next day ushered in another seismic shift, as I received an email from Thomas Keller, my biological father, replying to the message I had sent after verifying his identity through public records. His response was measured yet warm, revealing his astonishment at discovering my existence and asking for time to digest this new reality. He also conveyed a sincere desire to connect once he had come to terms with the idea of a daughter he had never known. I noticed from your email signature that you are in finance in New York, he mentioned in his first reply. Interestingly, I will be in Manhattan next month for a conference. Perhaps we could share a coffee if that feels right to you. The mere recognition of my professional identity, free from any qualifiers or comparisons, acted as a soothing balm on my tender emotional wounds. The neutral respect in his tone hinted at possibilities for connection, unblemished by the intricate history we share. As these personal upheavals redefined my perception of family, the professional realm persisted, seemingly unaffected by my inner turmoil. My boss reached out midweek, inquiring about a client presentation, the routine nature of work conversations offering an unexpected solace amidst the surrounding chaos. The Richardson account requires your risk assessment model to be explained in person, she conveyed to me. They are calling for you directly, Eliza. Your reputation is on the rise. The recognition of your professional worth, independent of familial ties, has underscored what should have been clear from the start. My value stands apart from the Matthews name or its endorsement, rooted firmly in my own abilities and character. 6 days after the reunion, Richard initiated his first direct communication through his attorney, delivering a letter that was coldly formal in tone. It demanded the return of the Mercedes and threatened legal action over public defamatory statements concerning paternity. The stark contrast between this response and Thomas's cautious yet compassionate email illuminated everything I needed to understand about both men. In that moment, genetics appeared far less significant than character in defining true parentage. I directed my own attorney to facilitate the return of the vehicle, emphasizing that DNA evidence could not be deemed defamatory by its very nature. James kept his silence, his allegiance to his father a natural reflection of their authentic biological bond and aligned perspectives. In contrast, Sophia reached out every day, our connection growing stronger through candid discussions about the family dynamics we had both noticed, but never dared to address. "He's been steering the narrative our whole lives," she remarked during one late-night conversation, forcing us to vie for a kind of approval that was never truly accessible to both of us. "I gained from that system, yet I was acutely aware of the pain it caused you. I regret not advocating for you more fiercely." Her recognition played a crucial role in mending wounds I hadn't recognized were still raw. The affirmation of my journey from an observer who had experienced it directly proved to be curiously more impactful than any test outcome could ever be. 6 months later, the revelation, the terrain of my existence had shifted in ways both nuanced and significant. Regular therapy sessions aided in unraveling the intricate tapestry of conditional love and performance anxiety that had fueled my successes, enabling me to discern authentic achievements apart from the frantic quest for validation. My relationship with my mother transformed into a more genuine connection, as her meticulous facade of perfection gave way to candid, at times difficult discussions about choices, consequences, and the intricate love that had always lingered beneath. The Matthews Theater. I encountered Thomas Keller for the first time at a serene restaurant close to Central Park. The peculiar sensation of witnessing my own expressions and mannerisms, reflected in a man I had never met, was both disconcerting and strangely reassuring. He noted as they savored dessert that you possessed your mother's analytical mind, a realization that emerged during a conversation that unfolded with unexpected fluidity. Yet, the spark igniting your discussions on market patterns, he claimed, was a trait inherited from him. Their relationship had evolved with care, each mindful of its unconventional start, neither anticipating instant father-daughter intimacy, but instead nurturing a bond through mutual intellectual pursuits and the revelation of genetic similarities that illuminated lifelong characteristics absent in the Matthews lineage. The last fragment of this reimagined life tapestry settled into position during Thanksgiving, when I chose to embrace Sophia's invitation for dinner at her home instead of the customary gathering at our parents' estate. Richard had opted out upon learning of my attendance, his ongoing refusal now evoking more sympathy than sorrow, his constraints becoming ever clearer as my own recovery unfolded. "He can't change," Sophia remarked, as we crafted dessert together, her children frolicking in the adjacent room with her husband. "It's not a matter of will. It's a matter of capability. His very essence is constructed upon certainties that your presence disrupts." The observation held no judgment, merely an acknowledgement of the unyielding truth we had both come to terms with. After dinner, Mother called, her voice more robust than I recalled from my youth, the facade of perfection giving way to genuine connection. "I'm proud of you, Eliza," she stated plainly. "It's not about your job, your address, or any of your accomplishments. Though they are indeed impressive, what fills me with pride is who you are. Your resilience, your ability to forge truth from deception. I wish I had expressed that every single day of your life." The words I had longed to hear from Richard for 3 decades, now freely bestowed by the parent who had always embraced me despite her imperfections, arrived with a healing power that was unmistakable, precisely because they were given without conditions or reservations. As I concluded the call, I grasped the most profound revelation of this 6-month odyssey. That family transcended mere genetics and legal definitions, consisting instead of those who recognized your essence and loved you unconditionally, who celebrated your true self rather than imposing the expectations of prescribed roles. The luxury car I had acquired as a desperate gesture towards a father figure who could never fully accept me had been reclaimed and subsequently sold, with the proceeds wisely invested in my future, rather than wasted on the fleeting illusion of losing approval. More importantly, I had reclaimed the emotional energy that had once been squandered on an unwinnable quest for validation, redirecting it toward relationships that nourished rather than depleted, toward work pursued for passion rather than proof of worth, toward building a life measured by internal fulfillment rather than external recognition. The journey from that fateful family dinner to this new equilibrium had not been linear or simple. Each day brought fresh challenges and occasional setbacks, yet the trajectory remained consistently toward healing rather than further damage. Perhaps the most meaningful measure of growth came not from grand revelations but from quiet Tuesday mornings, when I awoke without immediately assessing my worthiness, when accomplishments were celebrated for their intrinsic value rather than their extrinsic value, rather than their potential to finally earn paternal approval, when life was lived from an authentic foundation rather than performative desperation. As this Thanksgiving evening drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on the resolution of my paternity mystery. Yet, the more profound realization was that its significance had waned with each stride toward self-acceptance. The question of whose blood flows through my veins mattered far less than the values I chose to embrace, the love I recognized as authentic, and the truths I claimed as my own. Have you ever come to understand that true family isn't solely defined by blood? Often, those who should love us unconditionally are the ones who inflict the deepest wounds. I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below about how you forged your own chosen family or confronted those who failed to recognize your work. If my narrative struck a chord with you, I invite you to click that like button, subscribe for more tales of healing, and share this with someone who may need a reminder that their worth is not contingent upon the approval of others. Thank you for your attention, and remember, reclaiming your power often involves stepping away from those who never truly valued it to begin with.